Hello friends, welcome back to i-TUTOR NCERT series. Today we will be discussing Class 11 Geography NCERT, India Physical Environment, Chapter 7 Natural Hazards and Disasters. Let's start. Change is the law of nature. It is a continuous process that goes on uninterruptedly involving phenomena, big and small, material and non-material, that makes our physical and socio-cultural environment. It is a process present everywhere with variations in terms of magnitude, intensity and scale. Okay, so we are discussing about the change. Change can be a gradual or slow process like the evolution of landforms and organisms, and it can be a sudden and swift as volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, earthquakes and lightning, etc. Similarly, it may remain confined to a smaller area occurring with a few seconds like hailstorm, tornadoes and dust storms. And it can also have global dimensions such as global warming and the depletion of the ozone layer. Besides these, changes have different meanings for different peoples. Okay, so here we are discussing about the changes. They said that changes are of two types, mainly gradual or slow changes, then swift and sudden changes. So there is many types of changes. Two of them are gradual changes or slow changes, then sudden changes or swift changes. Now, from the perspective of nature, change are value neutral. These are neither good nor bad. Okay, so from the perspective of nature, they are neutral. Okay, neutral. But from the human perspective, these are value loaded. There are some changes that are desirable and good, like the change of season, ripening of fruits, while there are other like earthquakes, floods and wars that are considered bad and undesirable. Disasters in general and natural disasters in particular are some such changes that are always disliked and feared by humankind. Okay, so these are some of the introduction about change. Okay, the change happen in our nature. Now, look at this. What is a disaster? Disaster is an undesirable occurrence resulting from forces that are largely outside human control, that strikes quickly with little or no warning, which causes or threatens serious disruptions of life and property, including death and injury to a large number of people, and requires therefore mobilization of efforts in excess of that which are normally provided by statutory emergency services. Now, for a long time, geographical literature viewed disasters as a consequence of natural forces, and human beings were treated as innocent and helpless victims in front of the mighty forces of nature. But natural forces are not the only cause of disasters. Okay, disasters are also caused by some human activities. There are some activities carried by human beings that are directly responsible for disasters. Bhopal gas tragedy, Chernobyl nuclear disaster, wars, release of CFCs, that is chlorofluorocarbons, and increase of the greenhouse gases, environmental pollutions like noise, air, water and soil are some of the disasters which are caused directly by human actions. Okay, so these are some of the disasters that are caused by the action of humans. There are some other activities of human beings that accelerate or intensify disasters indirectly. Landslides and floods due to the deforestation, unscientific land use and construction activities in fragile areas are some of the disasters that are result of indirect human actions. Okay, so these are some of the result of indirect human actions. Okay, so there is also a presence of human beings. It is a common experience that human-made disasters have increased both in their numbers and magnitudes over the years, and concreted efforts are on at various levels to prevent and minimize their occurrence. Though the success has been only nominal so far, it is possible to prevent some of these disasters created by human actions. As opposed to this, very little is possible to prevent natural disasters. Therefore, the best way out is to emphasize on natural disasters mitigation and management, established of National Institute of Disaster Management, India, Earth Summit at Rio de Janeiro, that is in Brazil, 1993, and the World Conference on Disaster Management, May 1994, at Yokohama, that is in Japan, etc., are some of the concrete steps towards this direction initiative at different levels. Okay, so the National Institution of Disaster Management India, Earth Summit at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, 1993, and the World Conference on Disaster Management in May 1994 at Yokohama, Japan, etc. These are some of the concrete steps towards the direction initiated at different levels. Now, most often, it is observed that scholars use disasters and natural hazards as interchangeable. Both are related phenomena, yet quite distinct from each other. Hence, it is necessary to distinguish between the two. Natural hazards are elements of circumstances in the natural environment that have the potential to cause harm to people or property or both. These may be swift or permanent aspects of the respective environmental settings, like currents in the oceans, steep slopes, and unstable structural features in the Himalayas, or extreme climatic conditions in deserts or the glaciated areas. As compared to natural hazards, natural disasters are relatively sudden and cause a large-scale widespread death, loss of property, and disturbance of social system and life over which people have a little or no control. Okay, so compared to natural hazard, natural disasters are more problematic. Okay, because they relatively they are sudden and cause large scale widespread death, loss of property, disturbance to social system, and life over which people have a little or no control. Thus, any event can be classified as disasters when the magnitude of destruction and the damage caused by it is very high. Okay, so if the magnitude of destruction and the damage, okay, if that is very high, then it is called disaster. Okay, so a disaster, if an event can be classed as disaster, then what is the significance? Its magnitude of destruction and damage caused is very high, should be very high. Generally, disasters are generalized experience of people the world over, and no two disasters are similar and comparable to each other. Every disaster is unique in terms of their local socio-environmental factors that control it, the social response it generates, and the way each social group negotiates with it. Okay, so every disaster is unique. However, the opinion mentioned above is indicative of three important things. Firstly, the magnitude, then intensity and frequency and damages. Okay, so the magnitude, intensity, frequency and damages caused by natural disasters have increased over the years. Okay, so these are three important things. Okay, so that is magnitude, intensity, frequency and damages. Secondly, there is a growing concern among people the world over to deal with the menace created by this, so that the loss of human life and property can be minimized. Okay, so the first one is the magnitude, intensity, frequency and damages caused by natural disasters have increased over the years. Now secondly, there is a growing concern among people the world over to deal with the menace created by these, so that the loss of human life and property can be minimized. Okay, so this is the next one, loss of human life and property can be minimized. Now third one is significant changes have taken place in the pattern of natural disasters over the years. There has also been a change in the precipitation of natural disasters and hazards. Previously, hazards and disasters were seen as two closely associated and interrelated phenomena. That areas prone to natural hazards were more valuable to disasters, hence people avoid tampering with the delicate balance that existed in a given ecosystem. People avoided intensification of their activities in such areas, and that is how disasters were less damaging. Technological power has given large capacity to human intervention in nature. Okay, so now we know that the technology is developing day by day. So the technological power has given large capacity to human intervention in nature. Consequently, Now, human beings tend to intensify their activities into disaster-prone areas, increasing their vulnerability to disasters. Colonization of floodplains of most of the rivers and development of large cities and port towns like Mumbai and Chennai along the coast and touching the shore due to high land values make them vulnerable to the occurrence of cyclones, hurricanes and tsunamis. Now, classification of natural disasters. Human beings the world over have experienced disasters and have faced and lived with them. Now, people are becoming aware and various steps have been initiated at different levels for mitigating the efforts of disasters. Identification and classification of disasters is being considered as an effective and scientific step to deal promptly and effectively with the disasters. Okay, so today we are developing by technological field, and we know we can identify and classify the disasters very early. Broadly, natural disasters can be classified under 4 categories. Look at this. The first one is atmospheric, then that is atmospheric disasters, then terrestrial disasters, aquatic, and finally biological. Okay. India is one of those countries which has experienced most of the natural disasters. Every year, it loses thousands of lives and property worth millions of rupees due to these natural calamities. Okay, so India lost millions of rupees and thousands of lives in every year because of the natural calamities. Now look at this. First one is atmospheric natural calamities. That is blizzards, thunderstorms, lightning, tornadoes, tropical cyclones, drought, hailstorm, frost, heat wave or low, cold waves, etc. Okay, so these things, that is blizzards, thunderstorms, lightning, tornadoes, tropical cyclones, droughts, hailstorm, frost, heat wave or low, cold waves, etc. These are some of the atmospheric natural disasters. Second one is terrestrial. Earthquake, volcanic eruption, landslides, avalanches, subsidence, soil erosion. So these are terrestrial natural disasters. Now aquatic. Floods, tidal waves, ocean currents, storm surge, tsunami. Now biological. Plant and animals are colonized, that is locust. Insects infestation, that is fungal, bacterial and viral disease such as bird flu, dengue, etc. Okay, so these are some of the biological natural disasters. Now moving forward, so there is 4 types of natural disasters, mainly atmospheric, terrestrial, aquatic and biological. Now, natural disasters and hazards in India. India is vast and diverse in terms of its physical and socio-cultural attributes. It is largely due to its vast geographical area, environmental diversities and cultural pluralities that scholars often described it using 2 meaningful adjectives like the Indian subcontinent and the land of unity in diversity. Okay. Its vastness in terms of natural attributes combined with its prolonged colonial past, continuing variations, forms of life, social discrimination, and also equally large population have enhanced its vulnerability to natural disasters. These observations can also be illustrated by focusing on some of the major natural disasters in India. Okay, so now let's discuss some of the major natural disasters. First one, earthquakes. Earthquakes are by far and most unpredictable and highly destructive of all the natural disasters. Earthquakes that are of tectonic in origin have proved to be the most devastating, and their area of influence is also quite large. Okay, so the area of influence is also large. These earthquakes result from a series of earth movement brought about by sudden release of energy during the tectonic activities in the earth crust. So what is earthquake? It's a result from a series of earth movements brought out by a sudden release of energy during the tectonic activities in the earth crust. As compared to these, the earthquakes associated with volcanic eruptions, rockfall, landslides, subsidence, particularly in the mining areas, impounding of dams and reservoirs, etc., have limited area of influence and scale of damage. It was mentioned that the Indian plate is moving at a speed of 1 centimeter per year. Okay, so the Indian plate is moving on a speed of 1 centimeter per year toward the north and northeastern direction, and this movement of plates is being constantly obstructed by the Eurasian plate from the north. Okay, so the movement of Indian plate, okay, if this is Indian plate, that is move north and northeastern direction. Okay, so the Indian plate is move north and northeastern direction. So in this direction it's moving. So it collide with the Eurasian plate. Okay, so the Indian plate can collide with the Eurasian plates and it makes earthquakes in these areas. Okay, that is the northern parts of India. Sorry. Now, as a result of this, both the plates are said to be locked with each other, resulting in accumulation of energy at different points of time. Excessive accumulation of energy resulting in building up of stress, which ultimately leads to the breaking up of the lock and the sudden release of energy, causes earthquake along the Himalayan arch. Okay, so that is in the northern side or northern region. Some of the most valuable states of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim and Darjeeling and subdivision of West Bengal and all the 7 states of the northeast. Okay, so these are the main states which affect the vulnerability of earthquake. Okay, that is northern states and northeastern states. Okay, so they are more vulnerable to the earthquakes. Apart from these regions, the central western part of India. Apart from this, the central western part of India, particularly Gujarat, now Maharashtra, they have also experienced some severe earthquakes. Earth scientists have found it difficult to explain the occurrence of earthquake in one of the oldest, most stable and mature landmass of Peninsula block for a long time. Recently, some earth scientists have come up with the theory of emergence of a fault line and energy buildup along the fault line represented by the river Bhima, that is Krishna, near Latur and Osmanabad, that is in Maharashtra, and the possibility breaking down the Indian plate, Indian plate. Okay. Now, National Geophysical Laboratory, Geological Survey of India, Department of Meteorology, Government of India, along with the recently formed National Institute of Disaster Management, have made an intensive analysis of more than 1,200 earthquakes that have occurred in India in different years in the past. And based on this, they divided India into the following 5 earthquake zones. Okay, so they divide India into 5 earthquake zones. They are, first one, very high damage risk zone, high damage risk zone, moderate damage risk zone, low damage risk zone, and finally very low damage risk zone. Out of these, first 2 zones had experienced some of the most devastating earthquakes in India. Areas vulnerable to these earthquakes are northeastern states, areas to the north of Darbhanga and Araria along the Indo-Nepal border in the Bihar, Uttarakhand, Western Himachal Pradesh, that's around the Dharmashala, and Kashmir Valley in the Himalayan region, and the Kutch, that's in Gujarat. This included in the very high damage risk zone. Okay, so this is included in the very high damage risk zone. Now, the remaining part of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, northern parts of Punjab, eastern parts of Haryana, Delhi, western Uttar Pradesh, and northern Bihar fall under the high damage risk zone. Okay, so these states are come under the high damage risk zone. A remaining part of the country fall under moderate to very low damage risk zone. Most of the areas that can be considered safe are from the stable landmass covered under the Deccan Plateau. Okay, so that is the most safe area. Okay. Next one is socio-environmental consequences of earthquake. The idea of an earthquake is often associated with fear and horror due to the scale, magnitude, and suddenness at which it spread disasters on the surface of Earth without discrimination. It becomes a calamity when it strikes the areas of high density population. It not only damages and destroys settlements, infrastructure, transport and communication network, industries and other developmental activities, but also robs the population of their material and socio-cultural gains that they have preserved over generation. Okay, so they not only damage the settlements, infrastructure, transport, communication network, etc., etc., but also they can rob the population of their material and socio-cultural gains. Okay, so because they are preserved this by generation over generation, it renders them homeless, which puts an extra pressure and stress, particularly on the weak economy of the developing countries. Now, effect of earthquakes. Earthquakes have all-encompassing disastrous effect on the areas of their occurrence. Okay, look at this. On ground, the fissures, settlements, landslides, liquefaction, earth pressure, possible chain effects. These are some of the effects of earthquake on ground. Next, on man-made structure, cracking, sliding, overturning, buckling, collapse, possible chain effects. And finally, on water, waves, hydrodynamic, pressure, tsunamis, or possible chain effects. Okay, so these are the effects of earthquake on ground, on man-made structure, and on water. Apart from these, earthquakes also have some serious and far-reaching environmental consequences. Surface seismic waves produce fissures on the upper layer of the Earth's crust, through which water and other volatile materials gush out, inundating the neighboring areas. Earthquakes are also responsible for the landslides, and often these cause obstruction in the flow of rivers and channels, resulting in the formation of reservoirs. Sometimes rivers also change their course, causing flood and other calamities in the affected area. Now, earthquake hazard mitigation. Unlike other disasters, the damage caused by earthquakes are more devastating, since it also destroys most of the transport and communication links. Providing timely relief to the victims becomes difficult. It is not possible to prevent an occurrence of an earthquake. Okay, so we can't prevent an occurrence of earthquake. Hence, the next best option is to emphasize on disaster preparedness and mitigation rather than curative measures, such as establishing earthquake monitoring centers, that is seismological centers, for regular monitoring and fast dissemination of information among the people in vulnerable areas. Use of geographical positioning system, that is GPS, can be of great help in monitoring the movement of tectonic plates. Preparing a vulnerability map of the country and dissemination of vulnerability risk information among the people and educating them about the ways and means to minimize the adverse impact of the disasters. And next one, modifying the house types and building designs in the vulnerable areas and discouraging construction of high-rise buildings, large industrial establishments and big urban centers in such areas. Finally, making it mandatory to adopt earthquake-resistant designs and use light materials in major construction activities in the vulnerable areas. Okay, so these are some of the preparedness to reduce the earthquake problems or earthquake. Okay. Now, next one is tsunami. Earthquakes and volcano eruptions that cause the seafloor to move abruptly, resulting in sudden displacement of ocean water in the form of high vertical waves, that is called tsunamis. It's also called harbor waves or seismic sea waves. Normally, the seismic waves cause only one instantaneous vertical wave, but after the initial disturbances, a series of afterwaves are created in the water that oscillates between high crest and low trough in order to restore the water level. The speed of wave in ocean depends upon the depth of water. It is more in the shallow water than in the deep ocean. As a result of this, the impact of tsunami is less over the ocean and more near the coast. Okay, so the impact of tsunami, that is less over the ocean and more near the coast, where they cause large scale devastations. Therefore, a ship at sea is not much affected by tsunami, and it is difficult to detect a tsunami in the deeper parts of sea. It is so because over deep water, the tsunami has very long wave, very long wavelength and limited wave height. Thus, a tsunami waves rise the ship only a meter or two, and each rises and falls taken several minutes. As opposed to this, when a tsunami enters shallow water, its wavelength gets reduced and the period, so its wavelength gets reduced when it reaches the shallow water, and the period remains unchanged, which increases the wave height. Sometimes the height can up to be 15 meter or more, which causes a large scale destruction along the shores. Thus, these are also called shallow water waves. Tsunamis are frequently observed along the Pacific Ring of Fire, particularly along the coast of Alaska, Japan, Philippines, and other islands of Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and India. So these are some of the important places or important coasts which tsunamis are frequently observed or affected. After reaching the coast, the tsunami waves release enormous energy stored in them, and water flows turbulently onto the land, destroying port cities and towns, structures, buildings, and other settlements. Since the coastal areas are densely populated the world over, and these are also centered of intense human activity, the loss of life and property is likely to be much higher by a tsunami as compared to other natural hazards in the coastal areas. Unlike other natural hazards, the mitigation of hazards created by tsunami is difficult. So the mitigation is very difficult. Mainly because the fact that losses are on much larger scale. It is beyond the capacity of individual state or government to mitigate the damage. Hence, combined efforts at the international levels are the possible ways of dealing with these disasters, as has been in the case of tsunami that occurred on 26 December 2004, in which more than 3 lakh people lost their lives. India has volunteered to join the International Tsunami Warning System after the December 2004 tsunami disasters. Next one is tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclones are intense low pressure areas confined to a large area lying between 30° north and 30° south latitudes. So tropical cyclones are intense low pressure areas confined to a large area, lying between 30° north and 30° south latitudes in the atmosphere around which high velocity winds blow. Horizontally, it extends up to 500 to 1000 km and vertically from surface 12 to 14 km. A tropical cyclone or hurricane is like a heat engine that is energized by the release of latent heat on account of the condensation of moisture that the wind gathers after moving over the oceans and seas. There are differences of opinion among scientists about the exact mechanism of a tropical cyclone. However, some initial conditions for the emergence of a tropical cyclone are: first one, large and continuous supply of warm and moist air that can release enormous latent heat. Then next one, strong Coriolis force that can prevent filling of low pressure at the center. That is, absence of Coriolis force near the equator prohibit the formation of tropical cyclones between 0 to 5° latitudes. Next, unstable condition through the troposphere that creates local disturbances around which a cyclone develops. And finally, absence of strong vertical wind wedge which disturbs the vertical transport of latent heat. So these are the initial conditions for the emergence of a tropical cyclone. Now, structure of a tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclones are characterized by large pressure gradients. So they have a large pressure gradients. The center of the cyclone is mostly a warm and low pressure. So it has a low pressure center and cloudless core known as eye of the storm. Generally, the isobars are closely placed to each other. So the isobars are closely placed to each other, showing high pressure gradients. Normally, it varies between 14 to 17 MB per 100 km, but sometimes it can be as high as 60 MB per 100 km. Expansion of the wind belt is about 10 to 150 km from the center. Now, spatio-temporal distribution of tropical cyclone in India. Owing to its peninsular shape, surrounded by the Bay of Bengal in the east and Arabian Sea in the west. The tropical cyclones in India also originates in these two important locations. Though most of the cyclones originate between 10° to 15° north latitudes during the monsoon season, and in case of Bay of Bengal, cyclones mostly develop during the months of October and November. Here, they originate between 16° to 2° north latitudes and to the west of 92° east. By July, the place of origin of these storms shift to around 18° north latitudes and west of 90° east near the Sundarban Delta. Okay, so that is the spatio-temporal distribution of tropical cyclones. That's in India. Now, what are the consequences of tropical cyclones? It was mentioned that energy to the tropical cyclones come from the latent heat released by the warm moist air. Hence, with increase in distance from the sea, with increase in distance from the sea, the force of the cyclone decreases. So increasing the distance from sea and it reduces the force of cyclone. In India, the force of cyclone decreases with the increase in distance from the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. So the coastal areas are often struck by severe cyclonic storms with an average velocity of 180 km per hour. Often this results in abnormal rise in the sea level known as storm surge. This results in inundation of human settlements, agriculture fields, damaging crops and destruction of structures created by human beings. Now floods. Inundation of land and human settlements by the rise of water in the channels and it spills over present the condition of flooding. Unlike other natural disasters, the cause of floods are well established. So the cause of floods are always well established. Floods are relatively slow in occurrence and often occur in well-identified regions and within expected time in a year. So we can predict about the floods. Floods occur commonly when water in the form of surface runoff exceeds the carrying capacity of river channels and streams and flows into the neighboring low-lying floodplains. At times, this even goes beyond the capacity of lakes and other inland water bodies in which they flow. Floods can also be used due to a storm surge, that is in the coastal areas, or high intensity rainfall. For a considerably longer time period, melting of ice and snow, reduction in the infiltration rate and the presence of eroded material in the water due to higher rate of soil erosion. So these are some of the causes for flood. Though flood occur frequently over wide geographical areas having disastrous ramifications in many parts of the world, floods in the Southeast and East Asian countries, particularly in China, India and Bangladesh, are frequent and equally disastrous. Once again, unlike other natural disasters, human beings play an important role in the genesis as well as spread of flood. So humans have an important role in the genesis and spread of flood. Indiscriminate deforestation, unscientific agriculture practices, disturbances along the natural drainage channels and the colonization of floodplains and riverbeds are some of the human activities that play an important role in increasing the intensity, magnitude and gravity of floods. Various states of India face heavy loss of lives and property due to recurrent floods. Rashtriya Bhar Ayog, that is National Flood Commission, identified 40 million hectares of land as flood prone in India. Assam, West Bengal and Bihar are among the high flood prone states in India. Apart from these, most of the rivers in the northern states like Punjab and Uttar Pradesh are also vulnerable to occasional floods. It has been noticed that states like Rajasthan, Gujarat, Haryana and Punjab are also getting inundated in recent decades due to flash floods. This is partially because of the pattern of the monsoon and partially because of the blocking of most of the streams and river channels by human activities. Sometimes, Tamil Nadu experiences flooding during the November-January due to the retreating monsoon. So we already discussed about the retreating monsoon last class. So in Tamil Nadu, they experience flood during the November to January months because of the retreating months, or the northeast monsoon. Now, consequences and control of floods. Frequent inundation of agricultural land and human settlement, particularly in Assam, West Bengal, Bihar and eastern Uttar Pradesh, that is flooding rivers. Coastal areas of Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and Gujarat, and Punjab, Rajasthan, northern Gujarat, and Haryana have serious consequences of natural economy and society. Okay, so in these places, they mainly flooding of river. And Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, there is cyclone. And Punjab, Rajasthan, northern Gujarat, Haryana, they have flash floods. Floods do not only destroy valuable crops every year, but these also damage physical infrastructure such as roads, rails, bridges, and human settlements. Millions of people are rendered homeless and are also washed down along with their cattle in the floods. Spread of diseases like cholera, gastroenteritis, hepatitis, and other waterborne diseases spread in the flood affected areas. However, floods also make a few positive contributions. Every year, flood deposit fertile silt over agriculture fields, which is good for the crops. Majuli, that's in Assam. Okay, Assam, this is caused by the Brahmaputra river. It's the largest riverine island in the world. Okay, and it is caused by or it is created by the Brahmaputra. Is the best example for good paddy crops after the annual floods in the river Brahmaputra. But these are insignificant benefits in comparison to the grave losses. The government of India as well as the state government are well aware of the concerns created by the floods every year. Construction of flood protected embankments in the flood area, construction of dams, afforestation, and discourage major construction activities in the upper reaches most of the flood creating rivers, etc. are some steps that need to taken up the urgent basis. Okay, so these are some of the steps to take to prevent floods. Removal of human encroachment from the river channels and depopulating the floodplains can be other steps. Okay, so we need to removal of human encroachment from the river channel and also depopulating the floodplain areas. This is particularly true in western and northern parts of the country which experience flash floods. Cyclone centers may provide relief in coastal areas which are hit by a storm surge. Okay, the next one is droughts. The term drought is applied to an extended period when there is a shortage of water availability due to inadequate precipitation, excessive rate of evaporation, and overutilization of water from the reservoirs and other storage, including the groundwater. So, what is drought? It's a shortage of water availability. Now, types of droughts. First one is meteorological drought. It is a situation when there is a prolonged period of inadequate rainfall marked with maldistribution of the same over time and space. So that is called meteorological drought. Next one is agriculture drought. It's also known as soil moisture droughts. Okay, so agriculture drought is also known as soil moisture drought, characterized by low soil moisture that is necessary to support the crops, thereby resulting in crop failures. Moreover, if an area has more than 30% of its gross cropped area under irrigation, the area is excluded from the drought-prone category. Next one is hydrological drought. It results when the availability of water in different storage and reservoirs like aquifers, lakes, reservoirs, etc. falls below what the precipitation can replenish. Okay, that is called a hydrological droughts. And finally, ecological drought. When the productivity of a natural ecosystem fails due to the shortage of water and as a consequence of ecological distress, damages are induced in ecosystem. Various parts of India experience these droughts recurrently, which result in some serious socio-economic and ecological problems. Okay, so they may cause socio-economic as well as ecological problems. Now, drought-prone areas in India. Indian agriculture has been heavily dependent on the monsoon rainfall. We know we depend monsoon rainfalls. Droughts and floods are the two accompanying features of Indian climate. According to some estimates, nearly 19% of the total geographical area of the country and 12% of its total population suffer due to drought every year. About 30% of the country's total area is identified as drought prone, affecting around 50 million people. It is a common experience that while some parts of the country reel under floods, there are regions that face severe drought during the same period. Moreover, it is also common sight to witness that the other regions suffer due to floods in the one season and experience drought in other season. This is mainly because of the large-scale variations and unpredictability in the behavior of the monsoon in India. Thus, droughts are widespread and common phenomena in most parts of the country, but these are most recurrent and severe in some and not so in others. On the basis of severity of droughts, India can be divided into following regions. Okay, so on the basis of severity of droughts, we can divide India into following regions. That is, first one is extreme drought affected areas. It is evident from the figure that most part of Rajasthan, particularly areas of west of the Aravalli Hills, that is Marustali and Kutch region of Gujarat, fall in this category. Okay, that is extreme drought affected areas. Included here are also the districts like Jaisalmer and Barmer of Indian desert. From the Indian desert that receives less than 90 mm average annual rainfall. That is extreme drought affected areas. Second one, severe drought prone area. Parts of eastern Rajasthan, most part of Madhya Pradesh, eastern parts of the Maharashtra, interior parts of Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka Plateau, northern part of interior Tamil Nadu and southern part of Jharkhand and interior Orissa are included in this category. Next one is moderate drought affected area. Northern part of Rajasthan, Haryana, southern district of Uttar Pradesh, the remaining part of Gujarat, Maharashtra except Konkan, then Jharkhand and Coimbatore Plateau of Tamil Nadu, interior Karnataka are included in this category. The remaining part of India can be considered either free or less prone to the drought. Okay. Now, consequences of drought. Droughts have cascading effect on various other aspects of environment and society. Crop failure leading to scarcity of food grains, fodder, inadequate rainfall resulting in shortage of water, and often shortage in all the three. All the three is most devastating. Large-scale death of cattle and other animals, migration of humans and livestock are the most common sights to be seen in the drought-affected areas. Okay, so these are some of the consequences of droughts. Scarcity of water compels people to consume contaminated water, resulting in spread of many waterborne diseases like gastroenteritis, cholera, hepatitis, etc. Droughts have both immediate as well as long-term disasters consequences on the social and physical environments. Consequently, planning for droughts has to take both aspects into consideration. Provision for the distribution of safe drinking water, medicines for the victims and availability of fodder and water for the cattle and shifting of people and their livestock to safer places, etc. are some steps that need to be taken immediately. Okay. Identification of groundwater potential in the form of aquifers, transfers of river water from the surplus to the deficit areas, and particularly planning for interlinking of rivers and construction of reservoirs and dams, etc. should be given a serious thought. Remote sensing and satellite imageries can be useful in identifying the possible river basins that can be interlinked and in identifying the groundwater potential. Dissemination of knowledge about drought resistance crops and proper training to practice the same can be some of the long-term measures that will be helpful in drought mitigation. Rainwater harvesting can also be an effective method in minimizing the effect of droughts. Okay, so we can also do this process, that is rainwater harvesting. Next one is landslides. Landslide is rapid sliding of large mass of bedrocks. Okay, so what is landslide? It is the rapid sliding of large mass of bedrocks. Disasters due to landslides are in general far less dramatic than due to the earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis and cyclones. But their impact on the natural environment and natural economy is in no way less severe. Unlike other disasters that are sudden, unpredictable and are largely controlled by macro or regional factors, landslides are largely controlled by highly localized factors. Hence, gathering information and monitoring the possibilities of landslide is not only difficult but also immensely cost intensive. Okay, so it is very hard to find the landslides, that is the monitoring possibilities. It is always difficult to define in a precise statement that generalize the occurrence and behavior of landslide. However, on the basis of past experiences, frequency and certain causal relationship with the controlling factors like geology, geomorphic agents, slope, land use, vegetation cover, and human activities, India has been divided into a number of zones. So let's take the landslide vulnerability zones. First one, very high vulnerability zone, highly unstable, relatively young mountains area in the Himalayas and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Okay, so and high rainfall regions with steep slopes in the Western Ghats and Nilgiris, the northeastern regions, along with the areas that experience frequent ground shaking due to earthquakes, etc., and areas of intense human activities, particularly those related to construction of roads, dams, etc., are included in these zones. Okay, so they are in the very high vulnerability zone. Next one is high vulnerability zone. Areas that have almost similar conditions to those included in very high vulnerability zones are also included in this category. Okay, so they are also have the similar conditions of very high vulnerability zone. The only difference between these two is the combination, intensity, and frequency of the controlling factor. All the Himalayan states and states from the northeastern regions except the plains of Assam are included in the high vulnerability zone. Next one is moderate to low vulnerability zone. Areas that receive less precipitation such as trans-Himalayan areas of Ladakh and Spiti, that is in Himachal Pradesh, undulated yet stable relief and low precipitation areas in the Aravalli, rain shadow areas in the western and eastern Ghats and the Deccan Plateau also experience the occasional landslides. Landslides due to mining and subsidence are most common in states like Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Goa and Kerala. Now other areas. The remaining part of India, particularly states like Rajasthan, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, except district Darjeeling, then Assam, except district Karbi and Anglog, and the coastal regions of southern states are safe as far as landslides are concerned. Now, what are the consequences of landslides? Landslides have relatively small and localized area of direct influence, but road block, destruction of railway lines, and channels blocking due to rock falls have far-reaching consequences. Diversion of river courses due to landslide can also lead to flood and loss of life and property. It also makes spatial interaction difficult, risky, as well as costly affair, which in turn adversely affect the developmental activities in these areas. Now, mitigation methods. It's always advisable to adopt area-specific measures to deal with landslides. Restriction on the construction and other developmental activities such as roads and dams, limiting agriculture to valleys and areas with moderate slopes, and control on development of large settlements in high vulnerability zones should be enforced. This should be supplemented by some positive actions like promoting large-scale afforestation programs and constructing of bunds to reduce the flow of water. Terrace farming should be encouraged in the northeastern hill states where jimming, that is slash and burn, and shifting cultivation, this is still prevalent. Now, disaster management. Disasters due to cyclones, unlike the ones caused by earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions, are more predictable in terms of the time and place of their occurrence. Moreover, with the help of development of techniques to monitor the behavior of cyclones, their intensity, direction, and magnitude, it has become possible to manage the cyclonic hazard to some extent. Construction of cyclone shelters, embankments, dikes, reservoirs, and afforestation to reduce the speed of winds are some of the steps that can help in minimizing the damage. However, increasing the loss of life and property in countries like India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, etc., in successive storms is largely due to the high vulnerability of their population residing in the coastal areas. Now, on the basis of the above discussion, it can be concluded that disasters can be natural or the result of human activities, and all hazards need not turn into disasters since it is difficult to eliminate disasters, particularly natural disasters. Then the next best option is mitigation and preparedness. Okay, there are the three stages involved in disaster mitigation and management. First one, pre-disaster management involves generating data and information about the disasters, preparing vulnerability zoning maps, and spreading awareness among people about this. Apart from this, Disaster planning, preparedness, and preventive measures are other steps that need to be taken in the vulnerable areas. Second one is during disasters, rescue and relief operations such as evacuation, construction of shelters and relief camps, supplying of water, food, clothing, and medicine aids, etc., should be done on an emergency basis. And finally, post-disaster operations should be involve rehabilitation and recovery of victims. It should also concentrate on capacity building in order to cope with the future disasters, if any. These measures have special significance to the country like India, which has about 2/3 of its geographical areas and equal proportion of its population vulnerable to disaster. Okay, so in India, we have 2/3 of the geographical area and equal proportion of its population that is under the vulnerability of disasters. Introduction of the Disaster Management Bill 2005 and establishment of National Institute of Disaster Management are some examples of the positive steps taken by the Government of India. Okay, so the Disaster Management Bill that is in 2005 and the establishment of National Institute of Disaster Management. These are some of the examples that are positive examples that taken by the Government of India. Okay, so that's about the chapter. If you have any doubts, you can comment below. For more videos, do like, share and subscribe.